Welcome to the Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thanks for being with us today. It has been said in many ways that we have much more in common with one another than we have differentiating us. Those differences, though, can be difficult to talk about, especially when our views are informed by our widely different lived experiences and cultural backgrounds. Because of that, two groups in Northeast Ohio are making it their mission to bring people together to consider tough and sometimes divisive topics and find some way to relate to each other through dialogue. In Canton, a group called Courageous Conversations on Race Relations, or CCORR, has put together a monthly program that teaches people about white privilege, implicit bias, and anti-racism, to name a few things. In Cleveland, on the near west side, a group called Collective Thoughts meets twice each month, inviting people to reflect on and respond to issues including housing, policing, politics, gentrification, just to name a few there. Now, we have representatives from both groups here with us today to talk about why they're doing this work and what they've seen come from it in their communities. In studio today, we have Molly Weisel, a leader of CCORR and a member of St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Canton. Molly, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
We appreciate it. We also have Pastor Eric Howard with us with Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church, also in Canton, and a founding leader of CCORR. Pastor Howard, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
With us as well is Pastor Matt Weisenhunt with Harbor and Bridge in Cleveland's near west side and the leader of the Collective Thoughts group. Matt, welcome.
Good to be here. Thank you.
And Gabrielle Folks, who takes part in the Collective Thoughts group. Gabrielle is a senior project manager with the Urban League of Greater Cleveland. Gabrielle, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
If you're listening or watching and you'd like to join the conversation, maybe you had an experience where you had a difficult conversation with someone and you want to share how that went, or maybe you want some advice on having that conversation, send us an email at soi@ideastream.org, and you can also message us on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Now, as we start the conversation, we'll kick things off with CCORR. And Pastor Howard, that started in 2018, so how did that get going?
Yes, we, meaning African American churches in the Canton community, were invited to St. Paul's Episcopal Church there in Canton to figure out how to have a joint MLK worship service. That was the intent, that was the goal, that was the aim. But when we came together and started to talk, we quickly began to realize that we needed to do more than just settle for a joint worship experience. And that began our time together trying to collectively figure out what we might be able to do to contribute to the conversations around equality and fairness, and what we might be able to do to make an impact in our local area and context beyond just a joint MLK worship service, which we still have, and we have participated together in Mount Olive Baptist Church in Canton and at St. Paul's Episcopal Church. But that is, in a nutshell, how it started. It wasn't to become, as far as we could tell at that time, what it is today.
Okay. And Molly, what made you get involved with CCORR?
Yeah, so I think back in 2016, when my son was born, I just felt that the Lord was telling me I need to do more to bring about the change that I wanted to see in the world. And that's led me on a journey that led me to St. Paul's Episcopal Church and then Courageous Conversations on Race Relations. And I've just loved being a part of this group. And there are just so many faithful attendees that have just poured out their hearts. And through that community, we've really gotten a glimpse of what a beloved community can actually look like. And we've, made Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words come to life.
And Pastor Howard, you said it's quite different from what started as that joint service for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So can you give us just sort of a high-level summary of what happens now at CCORR?
So what happens now is we meet every third Tuesday of the month. We have about a six-course curriculum that has been developed to address some of the issues that you mentioned: implicit bias, redlining, the history and legacy of racism in this country. We're talking about white privilege. We're talking about microaggressions and code switching. We're taking just a look at these things in about an hour and a half or 2 hours every month, and we have had up to 85 people in attendance. We start with a meal because we know that food can kind of break the ice and get people to feeling comfortable. And then we get into curriculum. We often have guest presenters who are educated in the various fields that they will present on, and that is typically how it happens today.
Okay. Now, Matt, you lead Collective Thoughts Group. Tell us where this idea came from and how you would describe the sessions.
Sure. In 2020, we were tasked with kind of repurposing a local church on the Near West Side into something that can still be an asset for the neighborhood. And in that time, we were in the middle of the pandemic, and it was difficult to get momentum going for anything. But when restrictions started lifting up, there was a need among neighbors to kind of get together for some purpose and reconnect. I believe that many people would agree that a sense of community and connection is healing, but that sense of community has often been lost or broken apart by urban design and the way our neighborhoods are built and planned. So our hope was to redo that planning and bring people back together. And conversations over difficult to discuss topics was one of the ways we wanted to do that. And so we started the Collective Thoughts group in 2021 with the goal of just creating space on Sunday mornings when people are kind of comfortable getting together and bringing them out over a good cup of coffee and a seat for them around a circle to talk about whatever topic is the topic of the day.
And Gabrielle, tell us how you got involved with Collective Thoughts and your impression of it so far.
Yeah, so I think at the time, my first time attending Collective Thoughts may have been in 2023. And I had moved back to Cleveland from China. And so I kind of felt like I was rebuilding my life in a way, and trying to find new community. And I ended up reading an article in the paper about Collective Thoughts, and I said, okay, I'll attend and I'll see what this is about, and I've been a part of it ever since.
Is it something that is nearby home for you, or do you travel for it?
I do travel for it. At the time, I was living in Lakewood, so not that far, but now I'm on the east side in the Buckeye neighborhood, so not far at all. I come from Columbus, where to get anywhere is like, I don't know, 25, 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. So a 15-minute drive was okay for me.
Yeah, well, you know what? That is something, though, because you do hear a lot of people say east side, west side, particularly here in Cleveland. So you're coming back over to the west side, so we like to see that. Let me ask you, Matt, about the demographics of the people that come to the event. What does it look like typically at Collective Thoughts?
We get anywhere between 10 and 20 folks on a typical morning. And I think they're diverse in educational background, socioeconomic background. There's diversity in just the geographic regions they come from. And of course, there's a lot of different thoughts, a lot of different perspectives that are contributed to the group as well. So there is no one type of person or a way you can kind of stereotype the typical Collective Thoughts attendee. We're always surprised at the depth of each person that contributes, and we always learn something new about somebody each week.
And how about for Courageous Conversations on Race Relations? Pastor Howard, what do the demographics look like for the group?
We have a diverse group of people, as well as an intergenerational group too, that comes out to attend. And, I talked about having a curriculum, but there's no tuition. It's free. It's open to the public. All are welcome. And we've been able to create a really safe, open, and honest space for people to be able to converse around some pretty, sometimes difficult to talk about topics as well. And I'm proud that we've been able to do it in a way that continues to have people show up again, which tells us that we're doing something right, whereby people are ready to confront and address some issues that might be deep-seated within and might pull up some emotions for them as well, especially if they've been taught by parents and grandparents some wrong ways to think and some wrong ways to view others, but they come through, they stick through it, and they always come out better than before, and they let us know it. And so that's some of what we've been able to do with a diverse mix of people.
If you're just joining us here on The Sound of Ideas, we are talking about community conversations about difficult, sometimes divisive topics. We have a panel with us from 2 different groups who are hosting these talk sessions in Canton and also in Cleveland. If you want to be a part of this conversation, you can give us a call at 866-578-0903. You can also send us an email at soi@ideastream.org or send us a message on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. And Pastor Howard, to continue with you about what the curriculum is like at Courageous Conversations on Race Relations. Some of the things we mentioned before, redlining, urban renewal is the topic tonight. You all actually have an event happening tonight. Can you explain to us what redlining is and why this conversation is important to have?
We start with redlining. As a matter of fact, it's our first topic to address with our curriculum because we feel that it is something of an easy way to get into the tough conversations that will subsequently come up. And we deal with Canton locally. We look at the old land covenants from the early 1900s. We look at how it was documented and legislated that this area would be white only. There were to be no black people, no Jewish people, no Asian people, no people other than white people that were relegated to certain areas in Canton. And we look at how that has played itself out over the last century and the ways that it impacts where people live and the resources that are available to those communities. Because again, redlining also dealt with stopping certain areas from receiving financial services, banking support, and this has subverted their effort to grow wealth and to develop some resourceful means of living in certain communities. And so this is what we start with first with our curriculum, and that tends to make people feel like they can come back and they want to come back to hear and learn more.
And the way the program is set up, you have these designated topics for the first half of the year, but then it kind of opens up. So tell me about that for the back half of the year.
Well, we always find ways to keep ourselves busy. We show up in the community. We show up at events and festivals at community parks. We have, last year, we conducted a bus tour of Canton. Canton is set up in 4 quadrants, and we have toured through all quadrants with people who are on the bus to narrate the history, people from these communities, and it's a real eye-opening experience, especially when they talk about the urban renewal when Route 30 was built in the 70s and how it devastated and annihilated an otherwise thriving black community at that time in the name of renewal, without ever talking about the people that were dispossessed and those who were forgotten about and crossed over. And so that tour helps to further illustrate the things we've been talking about and the things we've been reading, because we have a book club as well that complements the conversations that we hold.
Mm-hmm. Molly, you do bring in guest speakers. There's a guest speaker coming in tonight. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so Professor Jackie Stuckey is from Malone University, and she did her whole doctorate on urban renewal in Canton. So she's quite the expert and is able to bring to life what Pastor Howard was just talking about with Route 30 and how that wiped out Cherry Avenue, which used to be a thriving community and neighborhood that was diverse and allowed Black people to generate wealth, and all those businesses were wiped out and over 1,000 people were displaced, and the promise of new housing and better everything, those were empty promises. So yeah, and Richie Harper, he presents on redlining. I know he uses a lot of Jackie's research, and she uses his research as well, but we do begin with the history of our city just because we feel like we can't accurately diagnose what ails our community now unless we truly reflect on our history and examine that so that we can make more informed decisions moving forward.
So we've heard a bit about CCORR and how that's organized those sessions. Matt, can you tell us more about what happens at a typical Collective Thoughts session? Your platform or your topic areas are a bit more fluid, I think. So can you tell us about topic selection?
Sure. We meet twice a month, and we try to ebb and flow between national and state level and then local issues. So one week we'll talk about Supreme Court decisions, but we'll follow that up the next time with the BRT line going down West 25th. And the idea is to give people a chance to reflect on things that are big and impactful more broadly, and then also talk about the more local things as well. And we found that folks' opinions diversify the more local we get. So it's always interesting to think we know somebody really well until they have an idea about a local topic that really surprises us.
Can you give us an example of some of those topics that might have been very passionate, that were hyperlocal?
Sure. We talk about, you're not going to believe this, but parking along major corridors has always been a big topic.
We've had that conversation
Right.
on this show. I believe you. Yes.
Yes. We may have cited this show as an example for our topics as well. But things like that, when a developer wants to build in a new space, how does the local community handle it? What are the ramifications? Those conversations tend to be fun, if that's appropriate.
Spirited, sure.
Spirited.
Some good, healthy debate.
Mm-hmm.
Gabrielle, how does it feel for you when you're in these conversations that get a bit more spirited? What do you take away from the dialogue on a typical session at Collective Thoughts?
What I take away is that there's always an opportunity to connect with people outside of Collective Thoughts. And so, usually after a session, a lot of people will stay for additional time and talk with one another. And so it's just an opportunity to build community, to build relationships with people, to understand people's perspectives deeper, and then to connect with people on a level that's deeper than just their opinions, because we're all more than that.
Mm-hmm. Have there been situations where you've gone to a Collective Thoughts session and your mind has been changed?
I'm sure. I think what I look for is, not necessarily for a difference in opinion, but okay, how can my thoughts be expanded, I'll say. And so I look at any topic as more of like a puzzle, and you're constantly adding pieces to it to create a fuller, better, more robust picture. And so I would say every Collective Thoughts session that we have does that, whether it's around a specific topic or whether I see an individual as, more expansive than perhaps what I did before.
And how are the topics selected, Matt? Who decides them? Do you pick them, or is there a committee? Do people suggest them?
Again, we try to keep them going from like more broad-based federal topics to more localized one, but sometimes there's just a collection of news that just needs to be discussed. So I think there was one weekend where the leader of Venezuela was taken by the United States, and that coincided with several other things. And we just came in that Sunday morning. We said, let's digest everything together, and we asked pointed questions about things. So sometimes the spirit of the culture dictates that, and other times we have some planned things as well.
Okay. If you're just joining us here on The Sound of Ideas, we are talking about leading and engaging in difficult conversations in our communities with people who are making those conversations happen. We're going to take a quick break now. When we come back, we will continue this conversation about those talk sessions. This is The Sound of Ideas. I'm Stephanie Haney, so we'll be back in just a moment. You're with The Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thanks for staying with us. Today, we're talking about difficult conversations on important topics, from policing to implicit bias, gentrification, and anti-racism. With us today, we have people leading and taking part in discussions on these types of things. On our panel, we have Molly Weisel, who is a leader of Courageous Conversations on Race Relations and a member of St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Canton. We also have Pastor Eric Howard with Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church, also in Canton, and a founding leader of Courageous Conversations on Race Relations. With us, we also have Pastor Matt Weisenhunt with Harbor and Bridge in Cleveland's Near West Side and the leader of the Collective Thoughts group. And we're also joined by Gabrielle Folks, who takes part in the Collective Thoughts group. Gabrielle is a senior project manager with the Urban League of Greater Cleveland. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can send us an email at soi@ideastream.org, or you can message us on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Maybe there's a community conversations group where you live that you'd like to share some information about, or maybe you want some advice on how to have a difficult conversation and start that dialogue with people in your life. I want to start with a audience member call that we got, and this was sent to me from my producer. So the call was from Reverend Robin Woodbury, and called in and was wondering about the impact of the current administration, the president and Congress, and the views on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. The question is, has the political climate caused an uptick in a desire to participate, or maybe a chilling effect in these kinds of groups? Pastor Howard, I'll ask you first.
First, I'd like to say what a pleasant surprise it is to hear from our friend and colleague, Dr. Robin Woodbury. Shout out to you for the work we've done together. To answer the question, have we seen an impact from the changes with diversity, equity, and inclusion with this administration? The answer is affirmative. Yes, we have. When I mentioned earlier that we have an intergenerational group that comes out, we had at one time a group of college-age students coming from local colleges in the area, and they were coming with a person who was over a program that they were in. And when this administration came in doing what it was doing, they had to stop coming because there was a threat to lose funds at the school if they were to continue to show up to this educational and informing platform that we offer. So that was very sad and disheartening, but very much in our face to the reality of what's happening in D.C.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Molly.
And I might just add, Stark Fresh was a longtime partner of Mount Olive and St. Paul's in this work, and they provided nutritious food in the food deserts of Canton and many other resources. They had to close their doors last June because they lost funding that fell under diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that was a heartbreaking event for us.
Mm. Matt, what's it been like at Collective Thoughts? Has anything related to DEI in this particular administration, is it coming up at Collective Thoughts? Is it bringing more people in? Is it maybe deterring folks?
Good question. There was a time about a year ago where the DEI cuts affected a few members of our group and the work that they do. We talked about that at length, and they shared their experiences with it. Folks are pretty good about pinpointing how they feel and why, and directly connecting that to their line of work or their experience regarding the administration, especially around DEI and the cuts at that time. I was very impressed with the stories and the experiences shared. I don't know if we see an uptick in people coming, but it is definitely part of the subject matter we discuss.
We have an email now in from Dave, and Dave is bringing awareness to another group here in the Northeast Ohio area. Dave mentions Clean Speech Cleveland Osa Shalom, Words of Peace, and says that today's topic reading is wrong for the right reasons. And I can tell you I got some information from my producer about the group. This is a group that seeks to unite Jewish communities. There's a Cleveland chapter, and one of the big tenets there is mindfulness. Dave, thank you very much for sharing that with us. Again, if you want to be a part of this conversation, maybe you have a group you'd like to let us know about, or a question or a comment for our panel, you can email us at soi@ideastream.org, or you can send us a message on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Now, Molly, we mentioned that one of the things that Courageous Conversations on Race Relations focuses on is anti-racism. Can you explain what that is for us?
Well, I think it's good to pause and recognize that each person is on their own journey of racial awakening. So anti-racism will look different for each person, and at Courageous Conversations, we respect and honor that. With that being said, though, I think if we are hoping to see somebody be anti-racist, number one, we're hoping they're committing to educating themselves. When you swim in the waters of a racialized society, it is very easy to just think things like Pastor Howard said that aren't true and have a lot of misconceptions. So it takes a lot of podcasts and books and conversations to untangle and wire that faulty thinking and rewire our brains to see our neighbors as they truly are and to mend our hearts to really love our neighbors well. Number two, I think that hence our name, we have to courageously confront the racism that is around us. So that often means uncomfortable conversations with family, friends, coworkers. Number three, I think that when we show up to the polls to vote, we need to be considering not just ourselves and our families and our pocketbooks, but marginalized communities that have historically been subject to racism and injustices, and how can we help those communities flourish? Another example is we live in a capitalistic society, so how we spend our money matters. And are we giving to organizations that are doing good work to confront injustices? Are we supporting minority-owned businesses, or are we still shopping at corporations that have abandoned the practices of diversity, equity, and inclusion? And so those are some personal examples, but I think if we are ultimately trying to dismantle the systems of racism in healthcare, education, criminal justice system, it's going to be a concerted collective effort. And so we need to make sure that we are helping individuals get plugged into organizations that are already doing the good work. So just to shout out a few from the Canton area, the NAACP of Stark County, the League of Women's Voters of Stark County, the Interfaith Coalition, Lighthouse Ministries, they serve families in the Southeast End that was most impacted by urban renewal. Canton for All People, they help provide affordable housing for residents in the Northwest section of Canton. So those are just a few examples, but we do encourage our participants to get involved with those organizations as well.
Mm-hmm. Gabrielle, when you think about your experience with Collective Thoughts, are there any things that you've experienced there that have impacted your personal life or your work once you leave the talk session?
Yes, absolutely. You know, as you mentioned before, you know, Cleveland kind of does have this east side versus west side thing. And I try to be as involved in my neighborhood where I live in the Buckeye area. And so it's always just very interesting because I see the city as one. Of course, Cleveland has so many very unique pockets of neighborhoods with their own history, but I'm always looking or trying to look at the city as one unit. And so, you know, seeing how people are, or what people are talking about, the different things that they're doing in their neighborhoods or in their communities, absolutely impacts, you know, when I go back to my side of town, you know, the conversations that I have in my community. And so I'm always looking at, okay, how can I bridge the gap here? So absolutely.
We had a comment come in from our Sound of Ideas Facebook page from Mark. Mark writes, "Your topic today on gentrification is near and dear to my heart because it is what landed me here in Ohio. Gentrification to me is the elephant in the room that nobody talks about. However, it has profound impact on the masses. Now, over the past 40 years, and especially since 2000, cost of living has skyrocketed. It's turning this country into a third country of the haves versus have-nots." Mark, thank you for sharing the comment. And Matt, gentrification is something that is listed on the website when Collective Thoughts is kind of explained to people. So can you tell us a bit more about those conversations and how you try to grapple with that with the group?
Sure. We're planted at West 44th and Bridge on the near west side, which has offered us a front row seat at some of the gentrification that has happened in that area. And so gentrification has often crept its way into various parts of conversations that we didn't even set out to talk about gentrification, whether it's public transit or development in other areas, and the economics of the city in general. And folks have a lot of opinions as to how and why we got here to our current state with gentrification. So it's always very spirited. We have a lot of people who come from and live or have lived in newer developed apartments or complexes, some who build them, and others who have been longtime residents of the area as well. And what has been great is the affirmation that, all folks, communicate to one another. Everybody has contributed or takes from these conversations, I think, some fresh or renewed perspective on things. Somebody will say, well, gentrification has offered a more cleaner or ease of use for the neighborhood. And others have said it really has made it hard to live into the DNA or the traditions that have made this neighborhood what it is. And so those conversations were some more of our spirited ones, but some of our more, I think, unifying ones as well.
Pastor Howard, I'd like to ask you about courageous conversations on race relations in terms of people showing up and what mind space you're often seeing from the people who show up. Are you meeting with people who are open to this dialogue, or is there any level of resistance, and how do you handle that?
So this example might respond to this question. I won't soon forget, and this was some years back, but there was a white brother in attendance at one of our conversations. I don't remember what the topic was, but he was married to a black lady. And as the conversation carried on throughout the night, his countenance drew troubled. His face was bothered, and he shared openly with us that he came to the conversation thinking that he had gotten all of that baggage out because he married a black lady. He had gotten himself beyond, the residue of bigotry and prejudice that was within. But he learned, honestly, through that conversation that he had more work to do. But he was really troubled by it. But he was open and availed himself to the information, to the learning, and he was able to perhaps figure out how to correct that. And so I think that I have not seen resistance in this time, to be honest. If they are resisting, they don't outwardly show it, but people always, again, come together. I've been so impressed and inspired by people's ability to come together and demonstrate that we can do this, that we are stronger together than we are divided and apart. And courageous conversation on race relations is just a prime example of that. You just need people who are willing. And that's the problem a lot of times. They're not willing because they don't recognize there's an issue. Resolution begins with recognition. If you don't know what you don't know, you're not able to address or correct what are your issues. And so we're just grateful all the time for the people that always show up.
Is it many new faces, or is it kind of a recurring cast of people that you're seeing there?
We get new people almost every month, and that's something we will do. We will ask, do we have any first-time newcomers here? And we always get some hands to come up. We had the mayor of Canton present last month, and we've had other stakeholders in the community to come out and be present, and we just hope we continue to do good work and have a good name about ourselves and what we're trying to do. And it's not just to have a good name. We're trying to make an impact, and I think that the issue is elephant size. And how do you deal with an elephant-sized issue one bite at a time? And I think in our own way, we are making small contributions that are impactful and meaningful.
Gabrielle, we know you're a regular at Collective Thoughts. You said you've been going there for several years now. Matt, what about Collective Thoughts? Is it a lot of new faces? Are you seeing a lot of recurring characters?
We have our definite regulars, a lot of people who don't miss a Sunday morning anytime they can, and then there are definite new faces for sure, right? Probably at least a couple every month, and they drop in maybe once or twice, and some stick around for further conversations.
Some of those conversations that you have can be very philosophical, like human suffering and books like Man's Search for Meaning. So how did you decide to kind of take that approach and welcome in those really kind of big, heady conversations?
I welcomed that approach because I read the book personally and needed an outlet to discuss it. So I picked Collective Thoughts to do that. But I think it was well received the week we talked about it. And it was one of those conversations that with 5 minutes left in the group was still kind of heated up. And like Gabrielle alluded to before, people were just sticking around afterward to keep the conversation going. But it was an enjoyable one, and it got into those threads of people's values space. And it really opened up new parts of people that you don't typically get to see on a more surface level conversation.
So if people want to be a part of Collective Thoughts, what should they know, Matt?
They should know that there is a seat saved for them. There is some coffee and snacks ready for them, and they don't have to do the readings or the watching of our videos ahead of time for whatever the topic is. They can just come in ready to listen or share or talk, whatever they'd like to do. And then they could either go to our website, harbourbridge.com, or reach out to me, Matt W. at harbourbridge.com, and just ask to be a part of our mailing list.
Okay. And Molly, you do have an event tonight, so can you let us know about your event tonight and how people can be involved with Courageous Conversation on Race Relations?
So tonight, starting at 6 p.m. at St. Paul's Episcopal Church, I believe it's like 425 Cleveland Avenue Southwest. We will invite people in, and B&D Food and Catering is going to be serving a delicious meal, so we hope you'll come hungry. After the meal, we'll start our conversation on urban renewal and dialogue about that. We usually wrap up around 8 p.m., so anybody is welcome. As Pastor Howard said, it is free, so we welcome anyone that wants to come. And then we also have our Social Justice Book Club that meets the fourth Tuesday of every month. So next Tuesday, same place at St. Paul's, we'll be discussing our next book, which is That Librarian, A Fight Against Book Banning by Amanda Jones.
All right. I want to thank our panel for being here for this conversation about difficult, important conversations. Molly Weisel, leader of CCORR. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Pastor Howard from Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church and also founding member of CCORR. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pastor Matt Weisenhunt, director of Harbor and Bridge and founder of Collective Thoughts. Thanks for being here.
It was a pleasure.
And Gabrielle Folks, senior project manager of the Urban League of Greater Cleveland and a participant of Collective Thoughts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That wraps up the show for today. If you missed any part of today's show, you can hear a rebroadcast tonight at 9 on 89.7 WKSU. You can also find every episode of The Sound of Ideas on demand wherever you get your podcasts and on the IdeaStream Public Media YouTube page. To get the last word on today's topic, you can email us at soi@ideastream.org or find us on Instagram. We're at The Sound of Ideas. Tomorrow, we'll hear tips on creating a will from an attorney with the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland, and we'll learn how an Akron man is using sneaker culture to connect with young people and discourage violence. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for keeping the conversation going. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sound of Ideas.